What's going on, guys? Joe Munoz, OneStepPrep.com. I hope you and your family enjoyed a very happy Thanksgiving. And before we dive into the content of this video, I just want to share with you how appreciative, genuinely, we are at the 1SP family for you liking our content, being a viewer of our content, subscribing to the channel, and being a fan and a supporter of what we do here. We genuinely appreciate that from the heart. In this video, I want to talk about the dispatch release. I saved the dispatch release from a flight that I did recently, and I want to talk about some things that I look for the second I get the dispatch release. Usually I show up to the cockpit, we do our preliminary inspection, we check the logbook, we do a few items right, and then we get our paperwork, and there's a few things that I look for in the paperwork immediately, and I want to share with you what is it exactly that I'm putting attention towards when I get the dispatch release. Now, the first thing is the city pairing. I want to make sure it's correct. And then immediately after that, I'm going to look for any alternate, if there is an alternate listed, and the remaining fuel. Okay, so in this particular case, I can see that, again, just to kind of put this in sequence, I showed up to the plane, got my dispatch release in hand, right? I've done my preliminary inspection, I've done the checking of the logbook, and let me back up for just a moment. In the preliminary inspection, you will notice we do things really on any airplane, 320 or 73, like checking oil quantity, checking hydraulic quantity, checking fuel quantity, checking oxygen bottle quantity. We're checking quantities, right? Because at this point, the quantities, the consumables, if they need servicing, much like that logbook, if there's any anomaly with the logbook, I want to know about it sooner rather than later so we can get maintenance involved well before the boarding process begins. That's why when we move on to this step here, I'm going to get my dispatch release and I'm looking for, hey, is the city pairing correct? Are there any alternates listed? In this case, there is. And what's my remaining fuel? The remaining fuel to me is important, and I want to know that early because I want to see how much wiggle room I have in terms of needing to deviate around weather, taking ground delays, that kind of thing. How much fuel am I planned with at the destination to be arriving with? Now, of course, always dependent upon if you're an international operation or a domestic operation here, at least in the States, you're going to need your minimum instrument requirements to get to the destination, to the alternate, and 45 minutes thereafter. So here, it looks like we've got almost 8,000 pounds worth of gas. We got 7,895 pounds. So if you don't know the rule of thumb, the trick, basically for most narrow body twin engine jets, 73 and 320, you can take off the last two digits of the fuel value and that gives you your time in minutes. So just to be clear on that, in this case, we have 7,895 pounds worth of fuel. That would roughly, I got to emphasize the word roughly. This is a rule of thumb. This is not exact math. This is a rough estimate that this is 78 minutes worth of fuel. So I can see I'm basically landing with over an hour worth of fuel, okay? Which is good. There is an alternate, and the next thing I'm going to do is look at the dispatcher remarks. It looks like there's a few scattered thunderstorms and route deviations possible. That's probably why we're carrying a little bit of extra gas. I just want to check the fuel situation now in case I want to add some fuel. I can get in touch with the dispatcher. We can coordinate that with the fueler early in the pre-flight process of the aircraft. A couple other things I'm going to do, right? Part of our checklist response, at least where I fly, is we need to note the required fuel at takeoff as part of a checklist response. Our checklist at some point will say fuel, and we need to note how much is required at takeoff and how much we actually have on board. So I do like to take the required at takeoff number, put it nice and large, and box it on my dispatch release. The other thing I like to do is organize my paperwork in a fashion that I'm going to actually show you right here. I draw kind of like a big cross on it that looks just like this. Not sure how well you can see that on the camera. And the way I organize it is I put the departure runway. I'm going to put a departing runway of 10 right on the far left, and I'm going to write it. I'm going to show it to you here in just a second. I put the flap setting, the CG setting, and then I put the engine out acceleration altitude. Well, basically what the engine out procedure is, so that in case I do have an engine failure, I have it in front of me immediately and I can reference it. And then I put the departure frequency over here on the far right side. So basically, I draw a little square that looks like this, and I have my departing runway right over here, 10 right, my flap setting and my CG setting. The flap and CG is relevant because when we start up our engines and we have to perform the after start flow, we're going to need to set the takeoff flap setting and the CG value on the THS, the trimmable horizontal stabilizer, as part of our flow. The engine out acceleration altitude's 1,000 feet, and then DT stands for direct track. It would just be straight out. This information you're going to get, what I circled here, the engine out information, you're going to get off of what's referred to as a TLR, or the takeoff and landing report, and then of course the departure frequency over here. This is technique, folks. This is 100% technique. You don't need to do this. This is just kind of a way to organize paperwork in a fashion that keeps relevant information in front of you. So remember, just to recap, let's back up a little bit. I showed up to the plane, we conducted our inspections, I now pick up my release, I looked at the city pairing, I looked at the remaining fuel on board in case I want to do anything with that. I'm happy with this number. We do have an alternate filed. Dispatcher remarks, we got a few scattered thunderstorms en route, deviations are possible. That's certainly... hey, check the weather radar if you haven't already. Usually by this point I've already looked at the weather radar, so I would be expecting to see this kind of thing on my dispatch release. Now I look for my required fuel at takeoff. It's, in this case, 18,000 pounds. I put that in a nice big text in a square so that I have that ready for my checklist response. I put my little cross just like this and organize some additional information. That would be basically my engine out procedure referenced via the TLR. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look to what gate am I parked at. I'm going to notate that so that when I call in the pushback, I can say, hey, you know, we're at gate, you know, G4, G5, you know, Foxtrot 6, whatever, and we're requesting pushback and engine start. So I have my gate information, and now what I do is I basically kind of continue through the pre-flight process, getting the ATIS, getting the PDC, the pre-departure clearance, and waiting until we get the passenger load count. Once I get the passenger load count, I will note the number of passengers that I have here, and then add the number of crew. So depending upon, in my case, a 320, I often fly 319, 321, so essentially the number of flight attendants and total crew therefore is going to vary depending upon the aircraft that I'm flying. But I basically want to have the number of passengers plus crew on board to give me a total souls on board value. So now think about some items here, right? I've referenced the fuel, I've referenced the engine out procedure, I've got my total souls on board value, I have the required fuel at takeoff, I looked at any dispatcher notes, and I put the gate information here as well. That's some things that I look for on this dispatch release that are of high priority, I would say. Kind of in general, this is what I'm looking at. Of course, there's a ton of information on here. We could dive deeper into this. I could say, hey, what cost index do they have us at? In this case, it's cost index 99. That basically means fly fast. There could be several reasons for that. Really, it's not of huge importance because whatever the operator or the company says they want you to fly it at is, you know, what we're pretty much going to program in the MCDU. Some other things I can look at is the flight levels. So they got us up at flight level 360. What altitude I'm going to cruise at. There is a max shear value, which I do like, particularly for the flight attendant briefing. The max shear value is a number system. Basically, the higher the number, the higher the shear, meaning the higher the turbulence, like a level 5, 6, 7 shear value is pretty turbulent. Something pretty typical on most flights is like a level 2 or a level 3 shear. So I can say, hey, you know, the max shear value at this waypoint, it tells me where in the flight I'm going to have that, expect that turbulence. That's also notated here. So that's useful for when I'm briefing the flight attendants. I can say, hey, relatively smooth flight if the shear value is low, or we're expecting some bumps at this particular point. I can look to the flight plan and say, this waypoint basically falls in line about 30 to 40 minutes into the flight, so I can let them know in time where we can expect to have that higher level of turbulence and what have you. So lots of information. Frankly, we could get down into a lot more. I'm kind of hitting the high points. Primarily, you heard me, if you're taking notes, you're the type that likes to take notes, look to your city pairing, look to your remaining fuel, make sure you have an alternate if needed, look to the dispatcher notes. That's also something I look to. And then the other thing, apart from others that I mentioned, was kind of notating the gate I'm at and also the souls on board. These are all data points that you're going to need readily available. Whether or not you want to do this method of organization is up to you. You don't have to. This is technique. But you're going to find that at some point, regardless of where you're flying, you're going to probably find your own method of organizing relevant information in a readily available way. All right? Hope this finds you well. Hope, as I mentioned, you and your family are well. Many exciting things happening at the One Step Prep family. As you know, we're no longer only One Step Prep, but we're also now expanding into One Step Prep Academy. We are a fully FAA certificated 142 flight school. December 10th at 4 p.m. we will be holding an open house at our Miami location. I genuinely hope to see you and your family and your colleagues come to this event. And in addition to that, next year, early in the year, January 3rd and 4th, we are holding an AX3 instructor certification event. If you don't know what that is, essentially, if you like our method of instruction, how we teach, I spent a good portion of 2020 studying my instruction method, what works, what doesn't work, why it works, and then trying to condense it into an easy to apply format for other instructors to apply and hopefully get similar results to what we get with our students here at One Step Prep. So if you're interested in becoming an AX3 certified instructor, it's a premium program for premium instructors, folks. It is a total investment of $997. Right now we do have it at $749. It's 2 days accompanied by a workbook, a video program, and of course the downloadable ebook. To get certified, you will need to attend either in person or virtually. There's just so much value that I like to deliver to you on a more personal level, not just video alone, but I literally want to spend time with you and listen to some of, well, there's all kinds of things. I won't spill it, but I definitely want to role play with you. I want to go through some different instructor techniques with you and establish a good foundation of values first. And this is what sets this certification program apart from any other fundamentals of instruction course. I've taken many fundamentals of instruction programs, and I can tell you none of them establish a foundation of values and then move into the strategy. So what we're going to be doing at this AX3 program is establishing first values, and then we're going to deliver into the better half of day one, going into certainly day two, the actual strategies that you can use to implement into your own teaching. All right. Hope this message finds you well. You know the name, Joe Munoz, Juan Dominguez, your friends in training program. Success. We'll see you in another video.